I'm calling this class Using Hints with Your Brain Engaged. Both Ancestry and Family Search have hints, and a lot of us don't know how to be able to make the hints really be valuable to us. So that's what we're going to talk about. First, we have to talk a little bit, and this is probably basic information that you already know, but I think it's good to go over and kind of make sure that we all have the foundation in our mind. What does a family historian or a genealogist do? What they do is they build a paper trail to tell us about who our ancestors are. And the paper trail shows us which sets of records our family is in. Which sources did information about our family get listed in? And that brings up a couple of rules. One of the rules is that we always in family history work from what we already know to what we don't know. We always go from the known to the unknown. And usually we find out that if we accumulate more of what we already know, that we're able then to be able to expand what we already know. We also want to use the source that has the information nearest to when it actually happened. So for example, if you found somebody's birth certificate and their death certificate, and you wanted to know information about when they were born and who their family was when they were born, you're more likely to get an accurate record in the birth record than you would in the death record. Because the death record maybe is listed 90 years later, whereas the birth record would have been made within a few days of their birth. So whenever possible, we use the source with the date closest to the event. And we're always going to work from the known to the unknown. What are we looking at today? We're going to be talking about records that are in a record collection. So for example, one record collection that I would be in would be New Mexico birth records. And so if I were to look for a set of records, and in the olden days, I would have to go to the state of New Mexico and ask for the birth records from the year 1946, and would they look up me? Now, those records are very likely on the internet, often at Family Search. And so that would be the record that would be the best record of my birth, would be the record that was made by the state of New Mexico when I was born. Another record that I am in is when I applied for a legal name change in 1968. That record is not likely to be online or indexed or an index made of it because it was a court record of something that doesn't happen very often. So that record's going to be hard to find. When I first started doing family history, I knew that the census record lists all Americans every 10 years. At least that's the goal. You know, a few are missed, but pretty much that's the goal. And in those days, there were no indexes of census records, and census records had often been microfilmed, but they had not been they had not been digitized or put on the internet. I don't think there was an internet back when I started doing family history. So when I wanted to find out more about Hugh Michael's family, and I had to figure out then, where did Hugh Michael live the most? You know, I figured he probably in 1880 lived in Adair County, Missouri. And so I could order through the library in Salt Lake, because they were leaders in this, the microfilms of the census records that were taken in Adair County, Missouri in 1880. And then that microfilm came in a roll, and I had to put it on a microfilm reader and roll page by page while I was looking on the reader, hoping I would find the family of Hugh Michael on the record. And when I did, then we couldn't take screenshots, so I would have to write it all down on a piece of paper and save the piece of paper in a place where I could find it again, and learn about Hugh Michael's family that way. And so then I'd say, well, he was there in 1880. Was he there in 1870? So then I'd look in 1870 and go through the same process. From the time I identified what record I wanted to look in, and I ordered it, and I lived in Provo, so I got it pretty quick. I could order them through the BYU library. And then I would probably get it in 3 or 4 weeks, and then I had 2 weeks to go through the film and look at all of it. That was a really long process. And occasionally, in some places in the United States, an index had been made in a book, and the book printed, and the BYU library had a copy. But I never was lucky enough that any of the people I looked for were in any of those indexes. So it was quite a process to look for somebody in the record. Now, our Heavenly Father must want us to be doing family history at an increased rate, because nowadays, so many records have been changed from microfilm to computer readable, and that's called digitalization. And they have been indexed so that they're computer searchable. And that just is marvelous. Some of you might have heard this story before, but a very distant cousin made contact with my husband, who was a Hugo, and she wanted to share Hugo information. And at one point in time, she came to the Salt Lake Library, and so we went up to the Salt Lake Library and met her and shared information with her. We'd been sharing information with her prior to that. And in the course of visiting, she said, well, I don't know why your church doesn't just put everything that's here in this library online. That'd sure make it easier for us. And I said, Susan, you have no idea what you're talking about. That is absolutely impossible. It will never happen. There's billions of records here. It just can't ever happen. Just forget about it. And about 3 or 4 months later, President Hinckley held a press conference in which he said, we need to decrease the amount of duplication in temple work. So we're going to digitalize everything in the Family History Library and index it so that we can look at things better. And I thought, impossible, never happened. And so they started out, and I remember, so they enlisted members of the church to help in indexing. And I remember when they hit 2 million records indexed. And we thought, my goodness, this is marvelous if you're in those 2 million records. And it was just unbelievable. Now it's billions of records that have been indexed. And what we have available to us is just so completely different. Now, if we want to check for somebody in New Mexico birth records or another major record source, we can go to Family Search, and I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm going to, well, that didn't work. I have to hit the button first that says Share Screen. And then I have to choose which screen I want to share. And then I have to share it. Then I have to turn off my email because that's not the one you want to see. So here is my Family Search. I have my Family Search opened. How many of you, that's not my Family Search. I'm gonna open up my Family Search. I'm gonna open up my screen on Family Search. How many of you can see this? If you can see it, raise your hand. I'm seeing most hands. This is what it looks like when I first open my family, using my login when I open up Family Search. Here is the word search on this main line that goes all the way across. And I can go under that search, and it gives me the chance to go through these billions of records and look for the specific record that I'm looking for. It also gives me the option to go down here where it says find a collection and type something in. I could type in New Mexico birth records, and it would give me the option to fill out these, this is called a template, to fill out these squares, these rectangles, about what I wanted to find in the New Mexico birth records. And that's how I would search the old-fashioned way. And that is a marvelous thing. But then the church did something different. They hired inspired computer geniuses. And these men and women have developed something called logarithms. And with a logarithm set up, the computer itself can go through a new collection that's added to Family Search or through my records in my family, and they can make a match. They can say, oh, here's a New Mexico birth record of somebody named Nancy K. Everett, who was born on the 11th of 11th, 1946 in Albuquerque. That's probably the same person as Nancy K. Everett that's on Family Search, who was born the same day in the same place. And so then it says, this is a hint that Nancy can follow to see if this is really her birth record. Now, and the Ancestry Company calls them leaves, and they're marked with a little green leaf. In Family Search, they're called hints. And if you go to your main screen, and I got there also by hitting the green Family Search logo that's over here in the corner. And on this side, it gives me a list of people in my family tree, and anybody that has this little blue icon, that's the hint. And I can look up their record and see what hint it is for them. And so that is one way that I can find out what hints found through these logarithms Family Search has found for me. Another way that I think is a little bit better of a way is I can go to Family Tree. Here's the icon, but I can choose the Family Tree part of the Family Search website by clicking on Family Tree and then click on Tree. And then I can choose then whether I want to see my family tree as a landscape, as a portrait, or as a fan chart. And or a descendancy chart. And I'm going to choose a fan chart. Then for the fan chart, I can choose the regular way, which is called Family Lines. I can choose a fan chart that shows where my ancestors were born. I can look at one that just shows which of my ancestors have the most sources listed, or the most stories listed, or the most photos attached, or in this case, research helps. And if I turn to research helps, anybody whose name turned blue or whose background for their name turned blue, that person has a hint that I could look up. So I've got quite a few, and these are just my direct ancestors that show up on this 7 generations worth of my fan chart. The list that I had earlier showed me anybody anywhere in my ancestry. But usually I'm going to care more about people that are closer to me. So I like this method. Another method that I could choose is I could just look up specific people in my family history, in this case, my great-grandmother. And as I look in hers, I see that the logarithms have said that maybe she's in the California Death Index. And if I look over here and look for her death, it doesn't list her death. So I would have to go through and look at that hint, and I might find out that in fact the logarithms were able to help me find out when and where she died. What? My husband says if I look under the vital records, he thinks I'm going to find her death. And there it is. So, do I think that she's in the California Death Index? No, but I bet her children are. So, in fact, let's do that. The fact that it just has a last name is kind of a hint that somebody didn't know all the information. So, if we look at this, it tells us that somebody with the last name of Michel was recorded in the death record of Walter Scott Michael. And so it tells us that Walter Scott Michael died in 1990 and all about it, that his father was Walter S. Michael and his mother's last name was Michel. Now, I happen to know something about this, and I know that when Walter S. Michael married Lydia Michael, they were cousins and didn't want to admit it. And so when they filled out their marriage license, he spelled his name the way he always did, Mikel, and she fudged on the way she called her name, and so she spelled it Michael. Apparently, whoever gave the information to the death certificate knew that there was a different name, different spelling, and so they spelled it that way, but did not list her first name. But this is the hint. And so I'm just going to show you how to attach it. This is not the one I did as I prepared the lesson. The problem with preparing this lesson is the best examples were already attached a long time ago. And it's hard to remember which example was which person I attached a long time ago is the best record. But, so we'll go to this. It says review and attach this record. So we went from the blue icon and we opened it up, and now we're going to do review and attach. And it's going to take us to another screen. And it is going to say on the right-hand side of the screen, it's going to list people in my family. But on the left-hand side of the screen, it's going to list people that were in the record. So it says that, let's come on down first to Walter S. Michael is who the death record is for. Now, somebody has already attached it to him. And so they went through and said, yes, Walter S. Michael, who died in California. I'm going to detach it for just a minute so that you can see what it looked like. So it says that Walter Sherman Michael, who was born in 1903 and died in 1990 in California, and I can check my records in California. In fact, it's going to tell me now this here, that the California death record says that he was born the 28th of December, 1903 in Colorado. And I know Mancos, Montezuma County, Colorado. That he died the 17th of January in Marin County, California. And my records say not just Marin County, but that it was San Rafael. So I know enough now to know that what was in the death record and what is in my copy of Family Search match. So I give them a reason to attach the record. In this case, I'm going to say name, dates, and places, and relationships match. And then I can put attach. And now, all of a sudden, because I said attach, on his page, under sources, it's going to list California death records with a blue link that you can use to open up that record and look at it in person. Now, up here on his mother's record, let's look here and see this. If we compare, it's going to tell us that his mother's last name was Michael, spelled way differently, see, than I have it spelled. And it doesn't have any other information. So I cannot put names, dates, places, and relationships match. I can only put although spelling is different, I know this is Lydia Lottie Michael. And I don't want to capitalize it. Lydia Lottie Michael. At her marriage, she spelled her name Michael. And I can say attach. Now, his father's name is not listed here, which is going to be interesting to us. I did not show you that up here I can do view record, and I will see the same indexed record that we saw earlier. And it tells me that that is in the California Death Index record collection. Often, but not in this case, it will say, look at the image. And in addition to just saying record over here, it will say image. And if you click on image, then you can see the actual page of the record. And that is one of the real hints, is what we can find written in the images. So I need to make a record on my paper that I always have with me when I'm doing family history, is that I need to find out why it did not connect us to his father. Let me go on down here. Sometimes it's down here on the bottom, but it wasn't in this case. Return to family history. Wow, how did I get that? So now I want to talk to you about another couple of examples that I did find to prepare for this lesson. Oh, now this is still showing right there as the hint is there. If you come over here to this part of your screen, there is a circle with an arrow on it. If I click on that, it's going to update what's in the computer. And if you'll notice, it no longer shows that hint. But now instead, it will show that hint listed down under the sources. And so it will say the person spelling M-I-C-H-E-L in the entry for Walter S. Michael in the California Death Index. And if I click to review sources, it's going to give me the option to review the attachments. So that is how it might work as you are working on this one. One day this week, when I was looking at my main family search screen, on this left-hand side of the page, it showed me a picture. And it showed me a picture of, and there might have been so many people added that I won't be able to find it. Yeah, there have been so many people added since then that I can't find it. But there was a picture here of my uncle on the other side of the family that has a picture of him and his siblings. And I thought, why would this picture of and it said at the top of this picture, the information, it said Della Vera Wilden. And I thought, Della Vera Wilden isn't in that picture. So I just kind of out of curiosity, I followed it through, and I discovered that my cousin had accidentally attached the picture of her dad and his siblings to my aunt that's on the other side of the family. So since then, I've sent her an email and said, oh, Connie, did you intend to attach it this way? And she wrote back and said, wow, I don't know how I did that. Thanks for letting me know. But while I have Della Vera Wilden on the screen, and I am not sure exactly what my train of thought in my brain was, but I looked at her sources. And now my picture of everybody that's here is covering up the whole list. But one of the things that I did notice as I looked up the sources was that Della Wilden is listed in the household of Reese Ray in 1910. Who in the world is Reese Ray, and why in the world would she be listed as in his family? So I clicked on Review Attachments because I want to see why she was connected to Reese Ray. It says she's attached to this family over here, and it lists all of the family members. I do not have a clue who Reese Ray was. So I want to find out why she's attached to him. My brain says there must be something about her that we didn't know. And so I want to find out why she's connected to Reese Ray. Now, how do I find out who Reese Ray is? Reese Ray, who's married to Violet Ray. There are two easy ways to do that. One is I can go back to Family Tree and choose Tree and choose Find, and I can put in the information about Reese Ray. Now, I should have written down the information about Reese Ray. Let's see what I can remember. Maybe I'll have to go back and look him up more. Reese Ray, a male and a residence. I can say that he was living in Mancos, Colorado, because that's what the census said. It said it was the census of Mancos, Colorado. And I can go here, Mancos, Montezuma County, Colorado, and that was in the 1910 census. And his spouse was named Violet. So I can put in that. And I didn't write down his age. I did someplace on my papers that I was preparing earlier, but he was born, according to the census, he was born in 1865 in Kentucky. So then I do Find, and I let the computers at Family Search see if they can find him. And lo and behold, they found him. Reese James Ray. It says he was born in Illinois, not Kentucky. But it does say that he died in Mancos and was buried in the cemetery where all my family is, and that he's married to Violet Wilden. Well, my great aunt Della Vera Wilden could very likely be married to Violet Wilden. So I can look up Violet Wilden, and as I look her up, I can look up her family. I can go to details and look up her family, and I can see that John Wilden is who Violet is John and Margaret Wilden's daughter. Well, that tells me who she is. John Hiram is my great-grandfather. So I can see that she's living with relatives. Now that kind of surprises me that since she lived in Mancos, that she'd be living with relatives that live in Mancos. Do any of you have any ideas why somebody, a young girl about 19 years old, would be living with relatives in the same town? An easy answer in my mind is that she's going to have a baby and wants help. That was something that happened, at least in our family. So I can then look up Violet Wilden and find that she's there. Let me see. Yes, if I follow the source linker through, I can see here that Violet and her husband Reese have 3 children that are attached to the record. Now, we already saw that they have some that weren't extra people that were in that record that weren't attached. So if I go back to Della's and look at her copy of the 1910 census, I can see that she's listed as a niece. Okay, yes, but now I know who she's a niece of. Now, because I have a brain, I see something else here that's very interesting. I see that living in the same household is a female who is 16 years old, whose name is Glenn, with a middle initial D, who is also a niece, whose last name is Anderson. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. So, if I come up here and review attachments, because somebody else had already attached that as a source,
text message,
it is going to tell me that Della has been attached, and it lists these other people, and it lists Glenn as somebody that hasn't been attached yet. Now, there might be something that I haven't yet learned about Family Search that helps me find how to hook up Reese to this screen. It says others from Family Tree, and it lists these people, but and it lists siblings under Family Tree. Well, that's not who I wanted. Children from Family Tree, that's not who I wanted. So in order to find out, or in order to be able to figure out who Glenn is, I'm going to have to search for Glenn in that same census. So I can go back to the records. I can do Family Tree, and up here I'm doing the search part of Family Search, not the tree part of Family Search. That would be the tree part. Now I'm going to do the search part, and I can do search for the records, and I can either choose just by what I know about her name. Her name is that it's Glenn D. Anderson, living in Mancos, Colorado in 1910, and then I can put down that this collection is the United States Census for 1910, and then see if it pulls her up for me. Now, there's another way that I can do this,
text message,
and that is I can go to Ancestral Quest. And Ancestral Quest is the database.
text message,
Excuse my phone. I guess maybe I can turn it on silent or something, because it sure is bothering me, and I'm sure it's bothering you. So if I go to Ancestral Quest is a program whereby you can put in your own database. And in the olden days, before we had Family Search, nearly everybody used Personal Ancestral File. Nearly all church members used Personal Ancestral File, which was promoted through the church and maybe even owned by the church. And we would build a list of all of our own family on PATH. Nowadays, the church no longer supports PATH, so most people are choosing other programs. It seems to me that among church members, Roots Magic and Ancestral Quest are two that are used most often because those two programs speak to Family Search. And that's a whole different class. But if I open up Ancestral Quest and I go to the Wildens, and I go to Anderson's, and again, my pictures are kind of blocking my screen. I think maybe I need to move it over a little bit. If I go to Anderson, I'm just going to go look and see if I have any Andersons. And I don't. You know what? I'm going to try opening a different one. That's my Everett file. I'm going to open up my Wilden file. Okay, now I'm going to look for Andersons, and look who I found. Glenn Dora Anderson, who's a female. And I'm going to look in her family, and I'm going to find that, in fact, Glenn Dora Anderson is the daughter of Margaret Wilden. So she is a relative of mine, and that's why she's there. Now I can, knowing that, I can look her up on Family Search and connect that record, that census index that we found. I can connect that to her. Now, in this case, with this particular record of Della Wildens, let me see if I can find my screen up here for Della. In this case, I didn't find out anything new about Della, but except that when she was 19 years old, she was in the census showing her as a living with that family. And if I look closer at her list of sources, I can see that she also was listed in the 1910 census with her father. Now, if I go back to this first one and I click on the image and I look at the image and I look closer, I can find out that Della is working in a hotel. And Glenn Dora is also working in the hotel. That information is right over here in the corner on the census. So they weren't living with Violet because she was having a baby and needed help, but they were teenage girls who were working in the local hotel. So now I understand a little bit more about Della than I knew before. And I know that also I know more about Glenn than I knew before because I used my brain as I followed the sources. Now, in that case, it did not tell me anything new. So I can just say I gathered more information, I have more sources. But here is one that I did learn more from. And Augustine is here. She's one of our workers in our Family History Center, and I was helping her follow through some sources. And she had a hint for Pantaleon Garcia in the Durango, Mexico birth records and civil registration. And so we wanted to attach those, and we did. We attached these records. And when we did it, we found out some very interesting things. By following through, as we compared, I'm going to detach it just for a minute so that we can look at it. Pablo Garcia, when we compare the record, we can see that Pablo Garcia, who was born the 1st of July, 1912, well, in Family Search, the logarithms, the hint would like us to attach Pablo Garcia to Paul Garcia. And it says that Pablo was born on the 1st of July, 1912, but Family Search says the 30th of June, 1912, in the same place. Do you think it's likely that when they went to register the birth that they got it one day off? Should that alarm us? If you think that should alarm us, nod your head yes, that you think it should alarm us. I don't think that should alarm us. My own son's birth certificate, didn't list the right birthday. He was born in the hospital. The hospital records tell us he was born August 25th. His birth certificate said August 26th. So he had to decide if he wanted to change his birthday or change the birth certificate. He chose to change his birth certificate. So this, as we look closely at the image and at the record first and then at the image, we can see that he was born the 1st of July, but that the birth certificate wasn't processed until the 8th. So we can add that if we want to add that by clicking on that little add button. And then we can add a reason to attach source. Why do you think his name would be listed as Pablo in one place and Paul in the other place? Paul later moved to the United States and Americanized his name from Pablo to Paul. And the family already had the list of the family with the name of Paul. So we can see now that he just Americanized it. So for our sources, we can say Americanized name, dates, and relationships match. Now we can also, we already knew that his parents were Pantaleon Garcia and Bruna Baltiar. Now Baltiar is spelled different. Sometimes it's spelled with a V and sometimes it's spelled with a B, but people that do Mexican research would tell us that's okay. And if we were to detach this record and look at the parts of it, we could do the same. We could do the same thing. But now, because we have a brain, we want to see what the image tells us. And so we are going to look up this image. And this image has 2 pages of records. One is for Pablo, and one is for somebody else that was born and recorded the same day. And Augustina doesn't read Spanish well enough to follow this through. And I don't read Spanish easy enough to follow this through. But we asked, we're going to go now to, oh, remember last week I had this wrong? I still have this wrong. I didn't talk to Augustina and change it. So we are not going to be able to find it under his sources. But what we did find out when we looked at the we had it translated and we looked at the translation, and my goodness, what the translation told us was marvelous. It told us, maybe I've got it. Oh, well, it'll probably take too long to find it. It told us that who the son was and who Pantaleon was, who his parents were, who his grandparents were, which town in Mexico they lived in, which neighborhood in that town they lived in, for both sets of grandparents, both the paternal side and the maternal side. Now that means then that we can figure out which churches were in each of those neighborhoods, and we can probably find out where the parents were baptized and where the grandparents were baptized in the Catholic Church, and then find out who their parents and grandparents are. So she can extend the pedigree of Pantaleon Garcia back who knows how many generations, because she followed the hints that were in Family Search and used her brain to open up the images and look farther than just saying match, 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 match. So that just gave us a lot more information. As we look now at Paul Garcia's page, we see that there is one record, and it was the Montana County marriages. You suppose Paul ended up in Montana getting married? By finding him in this family in the 1910 census. The 1910 census told us that he immigrated to the United States in 1902, or maybe it was 1905. So if we look up Paul Garcia as he showed up in the Montana marriage records, it didn't really tell us too much more about him, did it? But it lists who his in-laws are. It tells us that his wife is Romel Miller, and that his in-laws are Edward St. Clair and Olive St. Clair. Now, are Edward St. Clair and Olive St. Clair already in Family Search? One of the steps that Augustina needs to take is to look them up and see if they are already in Family Search. If not, she's going to want to look up Romel Miller, who was both the marriage record that's here and the Family Search record that's here. They both already say, yes, they knew that that was the right husband and wife. Probably that was family knowledge because they just got married in 1943. But the new information would be that Edward St. Clair and Ollie St. Clair were her parents. So she's going to want to make sure that they get listed in Family Search. Now, are they her direct relatives? They are not her direct ancestors. But that is information about family members that she now knows. And if she puts it on Family Search, this is what's going to happen. Family Search is going to make more hints for Romel Miller that show who her parents are. Then some other relative is going to get a message saying, oh, we found a hint for your relative, Romel Miller, and we know because of that hint who her parents are. And now that descendant of Romel is going to have extended her family history another generation. And that is why, instead of just attaching just the people, that's why we use our brains and follow through a little bit more and find out more about our ancestors. And as we get around to doing what we call descendancy research, and so she finds out who Pantaleon Garcia's parents are, which she found out in that birth record. And then she looks at their descendants to see all of their temple work is done. Then she's going to find Paul and his children and find out if they have any of them that have missing temple work. So that is how following our hints through gives us more information. Now, I am starting to wish that as I had done this, and I have to figure out how to get me back. I think how to get everybody back. I think this is how I get everybody back. And I am wishing that I would have had everybody opened to while I was talking so that I could have gotten comments from you. So if you had any thoughts as I taught this lesson, please unmute your voice and tell us what you thought about as I did this. Did you learn anything? Did you say, oh, I wonder if that applied to me? Did you think I never did that before? Did you think, oh, I already knew all of that, Nancy? Somebody unmute yourself and give me some feedback. Mike, are you going to unmute yourself?
Yep, I just did.
Okay.
I learned a ton tonight. I did not know that you could do this much stuff in Family Search. And I have a friend, particularly in the Mexico records, who could really use a lot of this information. I'll have to do it for her, but this was invaluable tonight. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Well, good. Thank you. You know, everybody that's here listening is going to have a different starting point. I see Ed Sparks. He's been doing research on a deep level for a long time. He probably didn't learn anything new tonight. He probably just watched to see how I was doing. But maybe he learned one little thing, and maybe he will be reminded of something so he can help somebody else with it another time.
Can you hear me now?
What, Ed?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think when I work with people, I try to encourage them to focus on what it is they want to know or where they want to go, and not get distracted, because you uncovered so many different things about your family.
Oh, didn't I?
You better be taking notes so that you can go back there.
Yes.
Okay, I had one other thing to suggest to you, that you go to a dictionary and look up what a logarithm is and what an algorithm is.
I bet I was talking about math things instead of computer things by calling it logarithms instead of algorithms. Is that right?
An algorithm is a process.
Okay.
A logarithm is an exponent.
Okay. Everybody pay attention to that, and next time know that it's an algorithm. Okay.
I learned something, Nancy. Ed told me several years ago that when I was doing attachments, I needed to make a written record of the other people on the record that didn't seem to be tied in directly to my line, but they were there, and I should write those down and check on those. Well, tonight you gave me a better reason for why to do it.
Okay.
You know, that if you check those people out and see if they're in Family Search, it makes it easier for other people to document their families.
Yes. And sometimes if that person is you, and sometimes it's somebody else.
Right.
Right.
And I'd like to say that I get a lot of hints that are almost irrelevant.
That's right.
In spending time that you're doing somebody's work that you've done, and then they come up with a hint and say, oh yeah, here he played football when he's 15 years old, or or some other irrelevant hint. Right? But you still have to do it. You still have to look at those hints and decide, do I want to take the time to go back and attach this and do a lot of other stuff? Because I think a lot of the hints are just thrown out your way to see what you'll do with them.
Sometimes it's a gold mine, and sometimes it's a repetitive, non-significant thing.
And so we have to do like you suggested, use your brain in determining something, whether it's going to be valuable or not to you.
Absolutely. Something that's frustrating to me, and yet I think it's part of this determination, is sometimes you'll get a hint and it looks to you like it's the same hint that you've already processed 3 times.
Yeah.
And I don't know why there are all those duplicates, but it's still good to look at them for a few minutes. Sometimes the things that you write off you don't think are important end up being important. For example, Oklahoma school records. It lists that such and such went to school in Oklahoma. Well, is that significant? Well, it is, because it's going to tell you who the father is. So then you can search the Oklahoma school records for that father, and you can find out all of his school-age kids. So you built practically a whole family group sheet through index cards for Oklahoma school children. So sometimes they end up being more important than you thought they were. Anybody else have any questions? Okay.